Welcome to Alaska Matters with Chris Story. To reach Chris, call 226-3933. 226-3933. Now, giving you something to talk about, here's Chris Story.
Lieutenant Governor Mead Treadwell is our guest today on Alaska Matters. It'll be an honor to have him here with us. Also, coming up, you'll have an opportunity to win a Blackwater Bend Espresso coffee card. In fact, two of them we're going to give away today. And this is the coolest thing about it. There's no way to lose. If you listen and you play the game, you're guaranteed to win. There's just no way you can lose today. And I like to set it up that way because honestly, it's more fun for me. Plus, Alaska News headlines. So let's go right into our Alaska News headline. You may have heard already that Pioneers of Alaska will now allow women to hold leadership roles within the organization. Established in 1907, women heretofore were precluded from being president, vice president, things of this nature, so no leadership roles. Well, they had a conference and they voted. This was in Soldotna at the Sports Center. They voted 185 yes, let the women lead. 55 voted no. Here with the reaction is Harry Homestetter. Harry?
Hey, Homesteader here. I voted no for the simple reason my homesteader's already got enough ideas in her head. Next, she'll be wanting to vote. Just think of it.
Hey, Harry, I got to tell you, women can vote, right? I mean, that's already the way it goes.
What? Since when? Harry Homesteader out.
For those of you that were not offended by Harry, I'd like to apologize. Blackwater Bend Espresso sponsors this portion of the program, or at least they did up until that little bit. We'll see how that goes. Pat wants to give away a couple of free coffee cards and remind you that she'll be open again for business on the 15th of October. She's actually back east taking care of some business and coming back to her spot there at halfway between Anchor Point and Homer, Blackwater Bend Espresso. So today what you can do is simply pick up a coffee card. Hold on to it. Actually, you'll pick it up when she gets back. But win, get your place. What I do is I let Pat know who the winner is, and then they just drive out there to Blackwater Bend and pick it up and get coffee. It's a $25 value. So if you think about it like this, dividends come out next Thursday. That's the 4th of October. $878 is the amount of the dividend. So if you want to push your dividend over the top, you want to push it up over the $900 mark, you can win today. And simply text me your answer to the following question. Here's the number, 907-299-7653. 299-7653. Here's the question. It's so simple. What are you doing with your dividend this year? Text me right now, 299-7653, 299-7653. Two of you will be selected at random for a free Blackwater Bend coffee card. Take a guess, if you will. Maybe you already know this. What percentage do you think of the electorate turned out for our primary in, in August? What percentage of the electorate turned out? If you guessed 25% or less, you're right. Is that not, is it indifference? Do you just not care? Obviously you do because you voted. If you listen to the show, I'm counting you among those that are registered and took the time to vote. And if you didn't, why didn't you? And the only thing I can figure, at least in my mind, one of the things I think that plays into this is a lack of leadership. I think it's a lack of a leader that we can get behind. I think it's a lack of leadership at local, municipal, maybe even statewide, and definitely on a national level. I think that there's a certain inherent distrust, indifference. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that the lieutenant governors of the nation and the secretaries of state can do. I know they're working on it. Hence, today is National Voter Registration Day, and that's what Lieutenant Governor will be talking to us about, Mead Treadwell. Interesting guy, by the way. Really looking forward to getting to know him. Interesting guy. But 25% or less, that means if you're in a room of 4 people, only one of you voted. Only one of you. I don't understand. What's it going to take? What's it going to take? All right. Here's a reminder. 299-7653 is the number. 299-7653. What will you be doing with your PFD this year? Simply text me your answer. 2 lucky people will be going to the Blackwater Bend for free. Coming up, Lieutenant Governor Mead Treadwell will be here on Alaska Matters.
Commit this number to memory, 399-1526. When you need snow removal, snow plowing, and sanding this winter, call Richard at 399-1526. Great Wire Construction, locally owned and lifelong Alaskan operated, can take care of all your snow plowing, snow removal, and sanding needs. If you'd like, Richard will deliver sand to your residence for your use when needed. Licensed, bonded, and insured. Great Wire Construction, 399-1526.
In 1964, the Beatles were holding your hand, and you could buy a brand new home for less than $20,000. In 1964, the average U.S. salary was just $6,000. A lot's changed since 1964, but one thing remains the same. The Homer News is as committed to serving the people of Homer today as they were on their very first edition in 1964. Find your new home in the Homer News, or how about a new job? What's the latest city policy? Read all about it in the Homer News. What are you doing this weekend? Chances are you found it on homernews.com, your home for daily best bets and 24/7 coverage of what matters most to you. Homer News. You're listening to Alaska Matters. I'm Chris Story, your host for Great Adventures in the Last Frontier. Are you in the mood for free coffee? We're looking to give away 2 Blackwater Bend Espresso coffee cards. The number to text your answer, 299-7653. It's not too late. We've got several, but it doesn't matter. Get in the mix right now, 299-7653. What are you going to do with your permanent fund? Lieutenant Governor Mead Treadwell is here to discuss National Voter Registration Day and other things. Lieutenant Governor, what will you be doing with your permanent fund this year, may I ask?
No, I've got a kid in college, so it's going to tuition.
Okay, there you go. You know, I don't want to complain. I mean, I appreciate you being on the program. It's a little light this year, but there's nothing we can do about it. You know, I remember as a kid, though, at least my parents told me this, they were, at one point, they got down as low as like $250, remember?
Yeah, I've forgotten the lowest one, but I remember the first one, which was 1,000, and that was pent up for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Some people have said that this is one reason why we ought to go to percentage of market value on the permanent fund,
as opposed to the rolling average.
As opposed to the rolling average, and I don't know, maybe that'll come up again. The permanent fund board is actually meeting tomorrow, and we'll see what they have to say, but. Okay. They've done a pretty good job of building back the principal after, I'd say they've done a great job.
Oh, amazing.
Back the principal after the big fall in 2008. So the rolling average is going in the right direction.
Exactly. No, I'm not really complaining. Hey, you know what? It's $878 more than I earned. I'll tell you that much. Well, I heard today that Governor Parnell is actually over in Asia working on a gas deal. Any progress reports to tell us about?
Well, I think it's great progress that Alaska is aligned on looking at LNG in the Pacific, because, you know, we've had our various route wars on going across Canada versus going to the Pacific Rim over the last 30 years, and it's very nice to hear the producers, the governor, Trans-Canada Pipeline Company all say that they're headed in that direction. Mm-hmm. And I know that before he went, we were hearing interest from people in Korea, hearing interest from a number of different buyers in Japan. We're waiting to hear what the producers have to say about configuration of a project, but it's, to me, a very positive thing. I worked on this round at Yukon Pacific in the early 1980s with former Governor Wally Hickle and Bill Egan, and it's just great to see us all out there in the marketplace again.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that was going to be my next question for you. What was it like working for Governor Hickle, and what kind of boss was he? Because you worked for him both in his administration, right, and then at his company.
Yeah, I worked for him at his company in the administration, also helped him start the Institute of the North. You know, Wally had a vision for Alaska that I think is very important. The first thing was, and, you know, I'm a limited government guy, but he made it very clear there's things government has to do. And when you own so many resources in common, when we own our fish in common and so much land in common, we have to behave like an owner and help bring in and incent the private sector to make things work. And that lesson I heard from him every day, and it's one that'll never leave me. His vision for Alaska as a state that can control its own destiny is something that he talked about. And, you know, the amazing thing about Wally Hickle is he was governor, he was interior secretary, he was governor again, times in the pipeline, the Exxon Valdez settlement and so forth. he thought the most important thing he did was helping to get us 100 million acres of land. And he did that just as a carpenter, took off his overalls and went to Washington and fought for it in the 50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's leadership. I mean, I think that's when I think back to his second. I was only, really aware of his second term just due to my youth. If you couldn't otherwise tell, me, I'm just a whippersnapper. But I remember his administration the second time around, and I just remember him as being a real leader. And that sounds like what you've just described.
Yeah. Well, one of the fun things that I worked on with him was doing the Kachemak Bay State Park buyback, and that was a negotiation that had its fits and starts. We came real close to getting it done, and then had to wait a year, and finally got it done. And he was dedicated toward doing all the things you have to do. He pushed for development, and he pushed for conservation at the same time.
You're listening to Alaska Matters. Our guest today is Lieutenant Governor Mead Treadwell. Mead, today is, of course, National Voter Registration Day, and we're talking about leaders. We're talking about things that really matter to every single Alaskan, every single American. In your opinion, as you know, 25% or less of the electorate showed up at the primary, and of course primaries are always a lower turnout, but in general, Mead, why do you think so many people don't vote? What is the disconnect?
I'm trying to figure that out right now, and there's a lot of people have said, well, just make it easier for people to vote, and we're trying to do everything we can there to make it easier for people to find where their polling stations are if they've changed with redistricting. We're doing everything we can to make it easier to register, use online resources. Soon in this general election, after October 22nd, you'll be able to have a ballot delivered to your computer electronically. You still have to print it out and sign it so it's auditable, and send it back. But the fact is that we are using technology to make it easier for folks. Sometimes I wonder if people feel they make a difference. And here's what you have to remember: we have a U.S. Senator representing us who was elected by less than 1,000 votes. We have Bryce Edmond serving in the legislature now, who won on the toss of a coin after there was an equal number of votes on both sides.
Yeah.
So if you don't think voting means anything, think again.
Yeah, no kidding. And I remember for one of the very first times at a presidential election, I guess you'd say it was 2002, that, there was Alaska on the map as everybody was discussing what was going to happen with hanging chads in Florida. By golly, we did count. I mean, so the polls closed, and so that was really fun to go through.
Our vote count, that was 2000.
2000, thank you. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. Well, I think for me, it starts at home. My folks instilled a real belief in our country, a belief in the process, and living with my father, who was in the military, his father, his grandfather, my maternal grandfather, who lived here and came to Alaska in 1947. So for me, there is no way you're going to stop me from getting to the polling place, even if I've had my appendix burst. I'm going to stop there and vote on the way up to the hospital. And I guess there's some maybe political excitement that we saw in 2008. And as you said, at that point, there was a lot of electronic things, a lot of text messaging going out from then candidate Barack Obama, and using electronic means to get to voters and getting out the vote. So what do you think is more important, harnessing the power of the technology or instilling a real excitement about the process? Or can you do both?
Well, I think you can do both, but let's talk about the excitement to begin with. First off, if you're a parent listening, when you go to vote, bring your kid with you. And, you can take your kid into the voting booth with you. You can show them how it works. There's kids voting at many of the schools, many of the elementary schools and middle schools and high schools. We've written to every principal in the state asking for voting ambassadors, and one of the jobs we're asking those ambassadors to do is to help find the 18-year-olds. I found 4,000 18-year-olds who aren't registered to vote who are getting permanent fund dividends. People are turning 18 this year. And so we sent them a letter. We sent a letter to, I think it was close to 20,000 folks who get dividends but weren't registered to vote last year. So we're doing everything we can to get people ready and eligible. But, just as a parent, do what you can to make your kids interested in the race. Make sure they know who's running. Have them go through the sample ballots with you and talk about the issues at the dinner table. And we've got to, this is part of preserving our liberty, and we've got to pass that value on to the next generation.
Absolutely. Lieutenant Governor Mead Treadwell is my guest today. You're listening to Alaska Matters. National voter registration is today. It is the day. Where do you go to register to vote? And does your vote matter? Coming up more right here on Alaska Matters. You know you need to wrap those expensive ornamental trees and shrubs. You just don't have the time or equipment. You're in luck. Danny and his team at Dutch Boy Landscaping are experts at tree wrapping.
I'm Bruce the Spruce, and I'm here to say, cover me up and keep the moose away.
Not wrapping, wrapping. You don't need to feed the moose with your high-dollar trees. Let Dutch Boy Landscaping protect your investment and improve your property value. You will love their low prices. I'm not kidding. Very, very affordable. Call Dutch Boy Landscaping today, 235-7140. That's 235-7140. Dutch Boy Landscaping, 235-7140.
Talk about wow factor. Deborah Lysick at Bay Realty in Homer has a great new listing. It's an immaculate property inside and out. I mean a spotless top-to-bottom reconstructed home with ocean views forever. Cozy guest cabin, a lush green lawn, major greenhouse, gardens, 2-car garage, boathouse, shed, sauna, plus what might be the world's finest fish cleaning setup. It's a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath home on almost 5 acres on Katrina Boulevard in Iliamna Meadows subdivision. And it's just like being in your very own personal nature retreat. To get a showing of this spectacular listing, call Deborah Lysick at Bay Realty in Homer at 235-6183. That's 235-6183. Or check what Bay Realty has to offer online at bayrealtyalaska.com. Call Deborah Lysick today at 235-6183. And remember, when you need results, Bay Realty works.
Chris Story here with your Radio Realty Money Moment. Before you refinance your mortgage, answer these questions. How long will you be in your home? How much equity do you have? How much will the refi cost you? What will you do with the savings? And finally, do you know, like, and trust your mortgage lender? Mortgage money's never been cheaper, but look before you jump. And catch Radio Realty every Wednesday at 12:30 on KPEN 102 FM. Chris Story, you're listening to Alaska Matters. Our guest this half hour is Lieutenant Governor Mead Treadwell discussing National Voter Registration Day. Mead, a listener texted in here and they said, how about a high school student that will turn 18 before November election, register 30 days before? So that's a good topic right there.
Yeah, Election Day is November 6th, so 30 days before that, October 6th, is the last day to register. Now, let's suppose your birthday is October 20th. You can register even though you haven't turned 18 yet, and you can vote in November because you will have turned 18. And so we actually sent, as I said before, we sent a letter to 4,000 high school students whose permanent fund dividend records tell us they're going to turn 18 before the election to urge them to register. But if you know a high school student who meets that criteria, by all means have them go online. You can go to elections.alaska.gov, download a voter registration form, fill it out, send it in, and you'll be able to vote in November.
Excellent. Now, you can also go to City Hall.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And many of the guidance counselors at schools have also the voter registration forms. The League of Women Voters, many different parts of the state are also going into the schools. In fact, that's another thing you can do as a public service project is go see your principal or whoever makes those announcements at the beginning of school and let other kids know that. We've invited principals to nominate voting ambassadors for this to kind of work this within the schools. So we want to make sure that everybody who is eligible to vote knows they've got the way to go do it.
How does, we mentioned earlier in the broadcast that 25% or less of the Alaska electorate showed up for the primary. How do we compare? How does Alaska compare to other states in general when it comes to voter turnout? Are we doing okay? Are we on par, or are we behind?
I think we are by and large on par with other states. In a primary, it's really hard to gauge because sometimes you'll have a big turnout for a primary based on a ballot proposition or a particularly contested race on the ballot. In the general, we tend to do pretty well. I think we're going to go over 50% in the general, but we'll see how it goes. We have a contested congressional race. With Sharon Sisna and Don Young running against each other, some other candidates. And you've got the presidential race, but we're going to be electing a new legislature, and every legislative seat is up. 59 of 60 seats are up for election this year. And so I think people will get out to vote.
Were you surprised that the ballot measure 1 failed by very, very close margins? But were you surprised that it actually failed that would have allowed municipalities to increase the property tax exemption from $20,000 to $50,000? Did that surprise you?
Now, Chris, you've thrown me for a loop because I think it passed, actually. Now I'm going to have to go look at the things, but we passed. We put out a press release last week saying that the final numbers had it passing.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great. Okay. Well, then let me rephrase the question. Were you surprised that it was so close?
What's interesting about that is we had two complex issues on the ballot. One of them I was required to hold hearings around the state, and we held a dozen hearings, including one on the Kenai Peninsula, and people from Homer came up to testify. And the other one had been kind of grandfathered before that requirement to the lieutenant governor had gone into effect. And I don't know if that made a difference or not. I know that a lot of people did not understand ballot measure 1 very well. It gives municipalities, some flexibility, but there were economists throwing numbers around left and right on how it would help or hurt people, how it might raise your taxes or something along those lines. So, my honest assessment afterwards is I'm not sure a whole lot of people understood it very well.
That was my judgment as well.
Have to put a very neutral issue, a neutral description on there that we had the ballot pamphlet go out with a pro side and a con side. It's hard to say.
Yeah. I'd read that in 2008, sort of switching topics back to the national level, in 2008, 6 million Americans didn't vote because they missed registration deadline or didn't know how to register. Do you think that, first of all, I don't know how we measure that, but do you really think if people were passionate, as we've discussed already, if they were really fired up, they'd find a way, don't you think?
I think people can find a way. I mean, let me just tell you some of the things we're doing. 2 years ago, a mom told me that her son in Afghanistan was in a forward base, that we had sent him a ballot that he could fax back, but they had no fax machine at the forward base. I said, well, how did he vote? And he said, well, he scanned the ballot, had somebody print it out in Italy, and faxed it back to us. So this year we've made it so that soldiers abroad can send their ballots in electronically by PDF. We still want them to sign the cover sheet because we want to be able to audit the ballots. And that's one of the fascinating things right now. We have the technology to basically allow you to vote on your iPhone, but we don't have the technology to give the public confidence that the election is fully intact. So we're still doing it with paper, even though you can, if it's sent in electronically, you'll be able to see and audit how it came in. It'll be printed out and scanned like the rest of it. And so it's very interesting how technology is making it more, easier for people to vote. And whether or not people do it is really up to them.
Yeah. That's when it comes back to that passionate part. I mean, you've got to just understand, as you said, this is how we preserve liberty.
Yeah, and part of the vision that I've got here is, here's a dirty little secret that some campaigns will tell you. If you vote early, if you ask for an absentee ballot or something, or vote early and your ballot's in, you're not going to get a lot of those phone calls that come right up before an election.
Oh, really?
Because it saves the campaign's money on either side on that. So a lot of people are voting early for that reason. One of the things that we're trying to do is give a real-time voter history so that the people who are making all those phone calls trying to get out the vote can actually focus their efforts on people who haven't voted and not harass those people who have already voted.
That's interesting. My concern, though, and set me straight here, Lieutenant Governor, is that if you vote early, or maybe let me ask it this way. Would you define the difference between absentee and voting early, or are they the same thing, in which case then they won't be counted necessarily on the day of election, or results won't necessarily be known by then?
Yeah, we do count the absentee votes, and the which is also the early votes. We count them after the results on that evening.
Right.
Generally, they tend to follow the trend. But I will say this. I like elections with finish lines. And there are some states that have turned voting into all voting by mail, so that, ballots go out by mail to everybody, and, they trickle in, and they have to be in by election night. I think that the concept of going to the polls, actually meeting your friends and neighbors, and being part of that process, and having a day where the decision is made makes sense, because the public discussion that leads up to an election tends to be focused on action at election day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm excited about this this upcoming election. I'm a political junkie, and so I'm always excited about it. But I'm sensing out there, just on the sites, social media, and other things that I monitor, and people that I talk to, and the people in my sphere of influence, that this is a pretty exciting election. And do you have a goal or a target of what percentage of electorate would show up for this general election, and you'd smile and go to bed that night thinking, I did a good job?
Well, I'd like to see us do over 50%. But I haven't really discussed that with our elections folks. I think we will make that target. The main thing I want to see is that I really don't want to have stories of people saying they wanted to vote and that somehow they were put off. And so,
right.
For me, I sit down with all the other secretaries of state from around the country, and other states are having battles on whether or not early voting should occur, and they're having battles on IDs at the polls. We basically settled that issue in Alaska, and you have an ID at the poll, but if people know you, they'll vouch for you at the polling booth. Mm-hmm. We want Alaskans to do this as kind of a community exercise, and let's save the fights for the issues.
Exactly. I like it. Boy, that's just awesome. You hit the nail on the head. I love it that we put that issue to bed, and now we're taking care of the real issues at hand. One thing that I learned in this process of preparing to talk to you is that as a poll worker, somebody that's monitoring and they're at the sites where people are casting their ballots, can actually get paid. I didn't realize it. I just assumed that was always volunteer, but they actually can make some money doing that.
No, and in fact, if there are any 16-year-olds listening, or if you have a 16-year-old, it's probably too late for this cycle, but we will hire a 16-year-old kid, pay them for a day of training as well as the day of working, so you can make some money. It's a good way to be involved in the process. You get to know that, and I'll tell you, Chris, there were several, probably 8 or 9 precincts around the state where there was a recommendation that we shut down. We actually talked to the legislators from those districts, and they said, yeah, it's okay. They vote for other things by mail. You can do that by mail. And I said, no, let's make sure that we have polling places open in all the places that we had them for the last 10 years. And let's also, if we have a problem finding people, hire some kids. Let's get the kids into doing this. And maybe I'm a little traditional, but I was a kid who I think my job, my father ran for office back in Connecticut where I was born, and my job was to go over and pick up the sign-in sheets, copies of that, and then cross them off the list so that we could call and get others out to vote. So get kids involved in the election process early, and they'll understand it and realize how important it is.
Sounds like you come by this honestly. It goes back a long ways. Yeah. Hey, a quick question before we let you go, Lieutenant Governor, do you find that your business degree is helpful in managing the business of the state in the capacity that you do?
I think so. A couple things. There are two things that sometimes scare people. One is numbers, and the other is science. And as a guy in business, it doesn't hurt to look at the numbers, figure out where money's coming from, figure out how to pay for things. And so it has helped me a whole lot to be able to read the state's budget, and also to understand some of the projects that people are trying to build around here. And, I'll even say that helped me just in the discussion with Representative Seaton on the pipeline to Homer and so forth. And I think the things that people in Homer did to ultimately put that project together were significant, and it took some business sense to do it. The other is I had the chance to chair the U.S. Arctic Research Commission, and before that I've worked on science and tech companies. I've helped start a couple of tech companies, and I meet a lot of people in politics who are kind of afraid of science. And frankly, if you make your decisions without science in the mill, you're going to make bad decisions. And we're trying very, very hard to help restore the king salmon around the state, and that's going to start with good science to begin with. So I'd say both the business background and while I didn't get a science degree, I've just never shied away from wading in and trying to understand those issues.
I got to tell you, I'm extremely impressed and just really honored that you spent the time with us here today. The website, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is elections.alaska.gov.gov. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, elections.alaska.gov. Lieutenant Governor Mead Treadwell, thank you so much for spending this time with us and all the work you're doing for the great state of Alaska.
Great. I'll be around Homer this weekend. Hope to see many of my friends.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Take care. What a great guy. Just down to earth, real people. I like that. I told him earlier that I'd missed an opportunity to meet him at during the campaign before he was elected, and I regret that. So now I feel like I know him a lot better. Any questions about where to register and all that? Elections.alaska.gov. Check that out. Okay, we've got some business to take care of before we wrap up. Blackwater Bend Mindbender. The winners are, let me just go through, because I said I was going to select them at random, so I'm just going to look at this. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, and you know who you are, I think. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, we've got news. Dave, we've got so much to do yet. What did you say? I've got 2 minutes left here?
Yeah, about 2 minutes.
2 minutes. We've got the Homer Chamber of Commerce not car raffle, but shopping derby to announce, and I'm just going to pick two off the top here. Alan, you are going to Blackwater Bend for free. Alan says he's going to take a much-needed vacation with his permanent fund to the Dominican Republic, warm air and the beach. Eat your heart out, Homer. Wow, that's one way to win. All right, Alan, you're a winner. And Dave, you're a winner, putting the PFD into savings. Okay, you guys win Blackwater Bend coffee cards. Now, here is the announcement from the Homer Chamber of Commerce. Nomar Canvas sold the most tickets and wins a $500 prize. They sold 129 Homer Shopping Derby tickets. The winner of the $5,000 is... That's my version of the drum roll. Ticket number 481, sold by Spyglass Inn. The name? The suspense is building. I can feel it. Karen Duncan. Karen Duncan, you won $5,000, and the person who sold the ticket was Spyglass Inn, and they win $500 themselves. There you have it, Karen Duncan, the winner of the $5,000 Homer Chamber of Commerce Shopping Derby. I'm jealous. I actually am a little bit angry at Karen. Monty Davis had told me I was going to win, and I don't know whether she's from Homer. Tiffany wants to know. I don't know. Doesn't say where she lives. I have no idea. If she would like, Karen, if you're listening. Oh, Eagle River, here we go. Sorry, Eagle River, I do too know. It's later in the text. Yeah, Karen Duncan of Eagle River won the $5,000 from the Homer Shopping Derby. Well, that was a great idea. Monty Davis, what a creative mind down there at the Homer Chamber of Commerce. Mead Treadwell was our guest. If you'd like to listen to the entire broadcast, if you missed any of it, go to our website, it's AdventureAlaskaRadio.com, AdventureAlaskaRadio.com. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow. Radio Realty will be on 102 FM. Dave Webb is back, by the way. Welcome back, Dave. Great to have you here.
Woot, woot.
Yeah, Dave's in the house. All right. Hey, go out there and make it matter, whatever you do. I'm Chris Story, reminding you that Alaska matters, and so do you.
The Peninsula's home for unforgettable favorites. Great listening. 620 AM, KGTL, Homer.